Okay, thanks. All right, bye.
Are we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have a quorum?
We have three. That's a majority on a five-seat panel. That's a quorum.
They start yet?
Are you ready? Okay, the time is now 7:05, so I'm going to call this meeting of the Loxahatchee Groves Planning and Zoning Board to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Chair Lipp,
Present.
Vice Chair Crawford, not present. Council, Committee Member Corning, not present. Committee Member Harris,
Here.
Committee Member Joyce.
Here.
We have a quorum?
Mhm.
Okay, let's, just for reference point, is there proof of publication that this meeting has been publicly noticed?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. See, it was on the website. I did not find, just as a point of reference, I did not find an agenda on the website. So whether or not this was noticed or not is a good
Yeah,
question.
the only required notice for site plans for P and Z is a notice on the door at the town administrative office. We have to advertise it in the paper prior to going to council, and signs have to be posted on the property, but that doesn't have to happen until the council meeting.
Now, does Palm Beach County operate under a different set of circumstances? Because when I sat on the planning and zoning board for the county, those were always, had the white placards on the sites.
Yes, we'll do that, but that won't happen until 10 days before the council.
No, planning,
At-
county,
Yeah,
planning and zoning.
Yes, that's
had-
different.
had the signs.
Yes.
So they operate under a different set of rules
yes,
than the town.
that's true.
Okay, I can see that. All righty. Okay, I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye. Motion is approved. So staff, let's see, who do we start with? Mark, you want to take over? And appoint, anyway, Mark?
Okay. Well, moving on, our first order of business is the site plan approval for Valley Crest. It's site plan project approval SP 2012-11. Consideration of proposed Valley Crest site plan for a 5-acre property located at 13710 Okeechobee Boulevard, south side of Okeechobee Boulevard, approximately 0.25 miles to 0.25 miles west of F Road. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Fleischman to provide the staff report.
Just so you have it on the record, staff, this code enforcement complaint came under the county before we were a town. Since then, ULDC has been adopted by the town. And precisely in section 20-020, landscape operations are prohibited in sure be interested in finding out why we're operating on two different zoning codes since the town is blessed there. So go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mark said, the property is 5 acres. It's on the south side of Okeechobee, about a quarter of a mile west of F Road. The applicant is Magic Properties 5 LLC. And we have with us tonight David Codiello, who is the agent representing the applicant, and he'll be able to answer any specific questions if they might come up after my presentation. The existing future land use designations are R5. The existing zoning is AR, agricultural residential. The current use on the property is a landscape maintenance business, and that particular use does not have any current development approvals by either Palm Beach County or the town. The proposed use is a principal use of wholesale nursery and accessory use of landscape maintenance. We have a copy of the proposed site plan on page 8 of the staff report, which you may want to refer to that during my presentation. And David has a larger version of it too, in case there are any specific questions. As the principal use on the property, the wholesale nursery consists of 2.55 acres, and the landscape maintenance business consists of 2.45 acres, ensuring that the wholesale nursery does encompass the majority of the property.
I just have a question.
Sure.
So what you're saying is the determination of what's the primary use and the accessory use is based on the acreage, not necessarily the value of the business or
That's true.
so you could have a wholesale nursery and not sell a single tree. I'm not suggesting that, just for clarification. And the main use could be this maintenance thing that's, happening, but because of the square footage.
There is some language in the county's code to that effect, that says that the principal use should be the primary revenue generator.
Mhm.
However, that wasn't one of the sections that was referenced by the magistrate, so that pretty much leaves it up to us to determine what principal use is in accessory.
Okay.
So the only two items that we really have are the acreage and the buildings.
Mhm.
And based on the application of those two criteria, it would meet the definition of principal and accessory.
Okay, thank you.
Just to tag on to what Grace was asking, besides showing square footage for, or acres for a nursery operation, what else can the applicant document for us? There actually is a nursery there.
There is not a nursery right now. That's one.
It's all trucks.
Yeah,
It's all
that's true.
trucks and lawnmowers.
That's one of
Looks
the,
like to me.
The applicant is going to have to demonstrate that he is going to, and he will implement a nursery on the principal acreage.
Okay, so it's an amazon.
Yeah, that's right. If a wholesale nursery is not implemented, then he would be in violation of the site plan.
I would indicate, based upon having been involved in the special magistrate hearings, that obviously we expect that the applicants will make a good faith effort in terms of making sure that the nursery does become the predominant or principal use of the property. Ultimately, that will be decided by the special magistrate if he feels that the effort is half-hearted or not appropriate, so.
One of the things I like to have determined for us is our ULDC that was adopted, and you go to it online, section 20-020 precisely says, land maintenance and irrigation companies are strictly prohibited, let me get that word, are expressly prohibited in AR zoning.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I mean, that was discussed quite a bit between county zoning regulations that were in place at the time, what the current code called for. That was all discussed with our code enforcement vendor and the special magistrate during those hearings.
And what did they say?
The way that it appears that the user can come into compliance would be if the lawn maintenance was an accessory to a wholesale nursery, which is how he's trying to comply. That's why I'm saying, if it's,
It doesn't say in section 20.
Right. That it would be
that
allowed as an
landscape, I mean,
accessory.
it doesn't mince it that way.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak now, or?
Doesn't-
Well, I mean, if we can, cut to the chase.
I
on
could
this,
shed some light on it. I think can I speak, or?
Yes, you're right.
Thank you. David Coviel on behalf of the applicant. When the client purchased the property in 2006, it was around the same time that the town incorporated. And shortly thereafter, the town passed a moratorium on development permits. So at that point, the county code still governed this property. And at that point, the use, a landscape maintenance company coupled with a nursery was a permitted use subject to Board of County Commissioner approval. So at that point, we had the right to go and get approval for this use. But then we were now within the town's jurisdiction and they passed the moratorium, so we couldn't go and get Board of County Commissioner approval at that point. So we were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So then we were cited in 2008 for having an unauthorized use. Now, based on that, the special magistrate agreed that we can travel under the county code for purposes of the use. Because when we purchased the property, the county code governed, and then the town incorporated and placed a moratorium. So we couldn't possibly comply with the violation by getting approval until the moratorium was lifted.
I understand what you're saying, I just don't agree with it. But that's just me. Jim?
Jim, are we setting a precedent for this use if this were to move forward? And I understand exactly what you're saying. But are we setting a precedent by not tagging it on to, or, I mean, this could have been a legal non-conforming use when the code, when we switched over to what we are now, but you were never permitted to do it through the county in the first place.
And we couldn't do it because of the moratorium.
Okay. Well, I mean, it depends on when the business actually went in.
Right.
I mean, at some point, you could have done one or the other.
Correct.
Okay. So shouldn't this, and I read there was some language about legal non-conforming use about the building, but shouldn't, I mean, if this were to move forward and it gets approval, this should be considered a legal non-conforming use so that no one else can come in and say, hey, you did it for them, because now we're creating a use that's in conflict with our code.
I would say that is true. Because the code violation was in '08,
Right.
and we're essentially going back and setting the record straight as of '08. And then that means that technically it would have had the equivalent of an approval starting in '08, which would make it a legal non-conforming.
If the county would have approved it.
Yes.
But it was within the town's jurisdiction at that point.
No, but what I'm saying is, did they meet the county requirements for an approval? So if they did and it was approved, that would be one thing. But if what they're asking us to do today doesn't meet what the county requirements would have been in 2008, so we need to make sure that if we're going to approve something that becomes a legal non-conforming use, that it would have at least been conforming under the 2008 county requirements.
I understand exactly what you're saying. When the magistrate's order referenced a couple specific
Right.
sections in the county code. And it did not reference, for example, specific land development regulations. So the way that we approached this as a staff was that, okay, if we approve the principal use and the accessory use, that meets the requirements of the county code that was referenced in the magistrate's order, but we're going to look at our specific land development regulations, the setbacks and the floor area ratios and things like that, because the magistrate did not address that.
Okay, with that being said, if the wholesale nursery isn't in place now, that meant it wasn't in place in 2008.
Right.
So now we're approving something today that wasn't actually in existence then. I'm not making the connection. Because now we have a accessory use to a primary use that actually wasn't existing in 2008, but we're creating a non-conforming use based on those two uses as if it were approved in 2008.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I hope I'm not confusing anybody.
Yeah, well, I see what you're saying, except that the ability to make that connection has essentially been taken away from us. The magistrate said, this is what you shall do.
Okay, so the magistrate said that they had to open up a wholesale nursery.
Because that's what the county code provided at the time.
Yes.
And by the way, there was a nursery component, and through the years, the nursery component, there was a hurricane, so gradually the nursery component.
I'm
Wasn't it?
really familiar with this property because I used to go by it 2 times a day and had to wait for all the trucks to come out in the morning. And I really don't remember there being a nursery there. Maybe
Yeah, I mean,
was
there
a
wasn't,
nursery
not to the extent that we're proposing now.
2006.
Yeah, not to the extent we're proposing now, but I don't, to answer your question, I don't think that this sets a precedent, because what you're acknowledging for the use is a right that we had under the county, and we could have gotten this right once the town incorporated. We could have went in and got approval for it, but there was a moratorium. And so at that point, the county code still governed our property, and we could have gone in and gotten approval, but for the moratorium. So I think what we're doing now is recognizing a property right based on the use, and I think what Jim is saying is, let's apply the rest of the town's current code with respect to setbacks to make sure we're bringing it more into compliance with the current code.
I just feel like there had to have been a vehicle at that time. I mean, you can't just hold a property owner in limbo for all these many years. So either, I know that the town put a moratorium in place, but there had to be a period of time. I mean, you didn't move in the day after we put the moratorium. I mean, the business was existing.
Correct.
And you had the opportunity to apply. For whatever reason, you didn't.
Yeah, my client didn't go, when it was within the county's jurisdiction before the county incorporated, they didn't, to be honest with you, they didn't know that they needed Board of County Commission approval for the use.
Was it a
So-
special use permit, Jim? Or was it just a straight up business tax license?
No, special approval, BCC approval.
That's a big deal.
But they had that, they still had that right, and that was taken away from them by the moratorium. So they still,
Is that true? I mean, is that statement accurate, that when the moratorium went into place, that took away all their rights for development on their property? So they couldn't go to the county, and they couldn't come to us?
It took away all of their ability to apply for an approval. Temporarily.
Temporarily.
Until the town's code.
and then the town's code came into place, and as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, the town code then said no more landscape maintenance companies. So it said, we had the right, but you can't file an application while the code is being drafted, and then, we're gonna draft the code and then take away that use from you.
Well,
So
the use was never there to begin with.
they've been operating since 2006.
Right, but the
I
use
know,
was
yeah,
there
yeah.
by special permit.
There's been a lot of uses in this town. There's a junkyard in the town,
Understood.
just up the road here. You know, there's Botanica, a place, you know, quite similar to Valley Crest. You know, is over on G Square. You know, they're probably just as big, if not bigger than you guys. They're on, what, 40 acres, Ron, is that? You know, so, you know, there's a lot of non-conforming uses throughout the Waxahachie Groves because the Board of County Commissioners really didn't care. You know, when what's the other place that was out here, the Villa and Son? When that popped up, we were all, well, wow, where did that come from? So, you know, so I understand what you're saying, and, you know, it's just something that, you know, we're changing a, you know, place that, you know, that's mostly trucks and things, and there's gonna be a nursery on here, but the use of this is a landscape maintenance operation. You know, and there's nowhere in our current code that says that you can have accessory uses that are non-compliant. And I understand, you know, and what Jim's trying to do is to, you know, fit this square peg into a round hole, and get a big enough hammer, to make it fit.
Based on the special magistrate's order, though.
Yeah, but based on the special magistrate's order, which
Absolutely.
I think, I'd have to get an attorney's opinion on that with the town council, if they, you know, approve of the special magistrate's order. It seems a little convoluted to me.
Well, I don't think it's gonna set, it may not set any kind of precedent at all, because I don't believe that we have any code enforcement actions currently on the table that go back to being a violation of the county code before the town was incorporated. And I think when you bring that factor into it, this can't be used as a basis to set precedent.
And when we were cited by the town in 2008, the direction by the special magistrate was to comply with that section of the code which required DCC approval for site plan approvals of some sort.
Site plan approval from the town or site plan approval?
Site plan approval from the town based
Through the county
on
code.
the county's requirement that use has to be an accessory use to a wholesale nursery.
And so at that point, that was the direction, we couldn't go to the county because we're now in the town's jurisdiction, and we couldn't go to the town because of the moratorium. So I think the special magistrate was just trying to respect property rights and try to push us more towards complying with the current code with respect to all the other requirements, setback, covers, and other requirements of that sort.
Jim, do you know, were you at the meeting,
At the,
special magistrate?
no, I haven't, I don't do code.
Okay, I'm just curious to know, Mark, why, if this were a special use permit through the county, why the special magistrate, I don't know if it was discussed or not, maybe you can share that with us, would not have at least referenced what the standards would be for the county to approve it in the first place? Because they may not have received approval. I mean, we're assuming by moving forward that the county would have given them approval. We don't know that they would have or not because we don't know what the standards were and if they actually would have met it.
Right.
So we could be creating a nonconformity that wouldn't have existed had they had the opportunity to go and get the approval. So,
Well, my recollection, and that hearing took place some time ago now, it's been a while, at least 6 or 8 months, but there was a lot of discussion about the county codes as opposed to what our codes require. And a lot of the circumstances related to, I mean, because I think this property has run up in excess, it's close to, what, 6 figures in fines? if I'm not mistaken. It's a high number. And he.
No, it's not that high.
It's high. That was, so, you know, he tried to look at, our code vendor, put all the county codes on the table, and I think what the magistrate was doing was looking for, a way to legitimize the use, if you will. Doesn't mean you have to approve, doesn't mean council has to approve. But right now, it's within the jurisdiction of the special magistrate. And the remedy for them to, you know, make the use full, if you will, or appropriate, is to seek these approvals. And it's been stayed at the special magistrate until they do that. And they had, up to this point, they made a good faith effort to try to do that. But, you know, that is the situation. Obviously, if this board and council doesn't approve it, well then, they're back before the special magistrate, and, you know, that will be dealt with there. But as of right now, that was, I don't remember a lot of discussion related to the special permit aspect of it. It was more or less trying to determine what codes were in effect at the time, what codes had jurisdiction, the particulars as it related to the whole matter at that time.
And Mr. Lip, you know, if this site plan is approved, the site is not going to look like the photo that you have there. It will be primarily a nursery. Otherwise, we'll be in violation of the site plan.
We have a more detailed description of the actual uses that are going to be incorporated into the site, starting on page 2 of the site plan. There's five existing buildings. Those buildings are going to be retained, and there's going to be no new construction of new structures whatsoever. In addition to the buildings, as I said before, there's going to be a 2.55 acre nursery, and according to Mr. Coviello, it's going to be a containerized nursery. There's going to be a 100-foot by 200-foot yard waste storage area. That's an area where the plant material waste from the lawn maintenance business is going to be brought back to the site and stored on site, and allowed to decompose over time, and then periodically be ground by a grinder that is brought to the site. There's not going to be a permanent grinder on site. And once that material is ground, it's going to be spread on the property and not taken off of the site. In addition, there's going to be a parking field for use by both uses, and the site's going to be served by an individual well and a septic tank. As I said, chipping and mulching, the imported waste is going to be performed by a tub grinder that is brought on the site and used on an as-needed basis. The tub grinder will not be permanently located on the site, and rather it will be imported from an off-site location.
Grace, you have a question there?
Jim, if currently this accessory use is not permitted as a primary use, or is not permitted, were the dimensions that they're proposing for the yard waste storage area, is that like a county requirement? I mean, how do you decide that 15 feet is?
That was a height that Palm Beach County uses that height, and also that height limitation was recommended by the fire rescue.
Okay. Based on that, does the county not have a minimum acreage size required to have a yard waste storage area of that size?
Not that I'm aware of. And again, I'm not sure how a specific development regulation like that comes into play with the magistrate's order, but.
I know, but what I'm thinking is, I mean, if you have a 10-acre piece of land and you're gonna do yard waste storage, this might, I mean, because this is 15, that's, you know, that's pretty massive. That's 100 by 200.
Very tall.
You know, that's like a, you know, a building in, I mean, a 1.5 story.
If you go by the site today, you see a very large.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if that would be consistent with what the approval would have been if it went through the county. We're involved right now where my real job, a very similar situation with the chipping machine coming in several times, you know, a week, and it's very loud and causes a lot of vibration. And there's hours of operation, which I know you have in here, but I didn't notice anything for that particular machinery equipment. But the yard waste storage area on this particular site, which happens to be a 5-acre site, is about half this size. But the 15 feet is what the fire department will only allow it to go up to. But you can still see that over the height of the fence in this particular situation I'm talking about. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen here. But in comparison, this is really large compared to the site. Just a comment.
If it were under the county's jurisdiction for site plan purposes, the fire department would still have the same requirements would apply with respect to the height.
I would be curious to know the answer to the question if there's a minimum site area in order to have a storage pile that, you know, this large, if there's a percentage or how they determine. Because you wouldn't want the storage area to be the entire site. I mean, there has to be some formula that says if you have this much area, only this much percentage could be used for storage. I mean, that's a lot of yard.
Okay, well, I can see if I can find something. I obviously don't have the answer tonight.
No, I know.
But I can see if that's available. I can talk to the county or check the code, the county's code and see. And if there's an answer to that, I can take it to the council when we go.
Is the biological debris storage area permitted at all? Is this something that is allowed on our current codes?
Under the current codes,
I mean, we have a vendor that is bringing in waste materials from who knows where, storing in 15 feet. We can't even store manure piled up more than 3 days before it has to be spread. We'd be exposed to exotic species, white fly, anything being brought in here. It's going to be turned into mulch to be stored on site. And they don't have to get a permit from Solid Waste Authority because they're not charging fees to bring material on site.
That's correct.
that's right.
So they're hauling all this for free now.
Well, it's included in the price of your
Well,
landscape.
yes, so there is cost being involved. So right now, it's the Solid Waste Authority approval permit is required.
No, we did meet with solid waste.
Yeah, they specifically told us that under the way that this operation is proposed, that they would not require a permit.
And we're allowed to let that sit there without being handled, processed, and spread out as mulch as the property owner wishes. He could let that pile sit there for years without doing anything, or, you know, but horse manure has to be spread in 3 days.
Well, under the current proposal,
That's been processed.
That could theoretically happen.
But the answer is yes. I mean, there's nothing subject to the height limitations of fire, circulation around it in case there is a fire. The answer is yes.
Well, in turn, you're gonna have a storage area of mulch on the property. And what's going to be done with that? How's that going to be maintained?
Once that it's put in the tub grinder, I mean, it's spread out and decomposes over time. I mean, it's not going to be a situation where
So you're going to use that for your parking field ground covering or something?
It will be spread over the site. And we, this has been operating, like I said, since 2006, and there's been no issues. We haven't had any code complaints. The business has been operating. I don't think, with the exception of this one complaint that somebody complained about the use, that's the subject of the code violation, we haven't had any issues at all.
Yeah, and this was taken to the town's development review committee, where the solid waste authority, from health department and the county agricultural extension service had an opportunity to offer comments on it. And the solid waste authority said that no permit was required. The Palm Beach County Health Department said that no permit was required. And the only comment that we got from anyone in the group was, sorry, I forgot what I was going to say here. But there were no, on the height.
County Fire Rescue,
Yeah, county fire rescue on the height.
pertaining to the fire hydrant.
Just as a related question, Mark, do you happen to know the status currently of the mulching operation at the corner of F Road and Okeechobee? It would be the southwest corner. I believe the property owner's last name is Nelson.
I'm not aware of anything happening with that, particularly.
Well, I think they were found in violation and told to, get out, but I think that the magistrate at the time might have just called it a non-conforming use.
That one I'll have to check. 'Cause I'm not.
This was in 2006.
F in Okeechobee?
Yeah, in Okeechobee.
Okay.
And it's a big operation. They got 2 or 3 cut grinders in there, and
Permanent one.
I'll be happy to check that, because I've not run across it since I've been here,
Yeah.
and in terms of any issues, and I'll see my report next week.
thank you very much. Appreciate that. Continue, Jim.
Okay. We did get a question from the health department, also on the fact that the mulch pile had to be no farther away than 1,000 feet from a fire hydrant that operates at a capacity of 1,000 gallons per minute. And we just got a letter from Palm Beach County Utilities Department, Water Utilities Department the other day, saying that there is a fire hydrant right out in front of the property and it's operating at 1,200 gallons a minute, so it meets that criteria also. So any comments that we got from permitting agencies were either addressed by the applicant or would have no effect on our recommendation of approval. Starting on page 4 of the staff report, we have a fairly detailed staff analysis of the application. And on page 6, sort of summarizes my previous statements about comments that we had gotten from other agencies, Palm Beach County Health Department, Solid Waste Authority, and Fire Rescue. Over on page 12,
So this would be the page number that we have on the bottom of our PDF?
yes, page 12 of the staff report for this site plan.
All right.
Starting there is a detailed analysis of how the characteristics of the site plan match up with the town's land development regulations. And the only issue that we have at this point is at the bottom of page 12, we have a 50-foot rear setback requirement, and one of the buildings is currently only setback to 47.2 feet.
Well, Jim, here again, you're giving me a hard time because you're referencing something in the town's ULECs, except for section 20-020, which prohibits this. So I don't think you can have it both ways. You know, this isn't, I won't say, but I mean, these are the rules that the town adopted and that we live under. So.
I'm just not sure the special magistrate has the authority to authorize something that's,
Yeah,
prohibited.
Judicial legislation
yeah.
at the magistrate level, I don't think can override what the
No.
town has put into law. If we need to, get another opinion from another attorney over what supersedes what, as a non-attorney, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last month.
And was the special magistrate aware that that use was prohibited?
Well, let me just chime in here. I don't think, first of all, I don't think the special magistrate is trying to set policy or trying to dictate to the town what happens. Code compliance is a process. It's not punitive. It's meant to bring issues in compliance. And I think ultimately that's what he was trying to do. As far as the setback, I know that wasn't discussed because that wasn't even known until now. Now, maybe in order to address that, maybe a variance is needed as a secondary application in order to make that happen. And I'm not passing judgment on that, saying that you should look at that or not. I'm just saying that might be because the special magistrate in agreeing to this process, certainly does not have knowledge of all these things as it goes through the process and things come up. He's basically waiting to see, number one, are they going to be able to successfully do this so that when it comes back to him, he's going to rule on the matter. But until that point, we don't know. So again, that I think that was a new issue that came up during the review of the site plan.
Right.
And I think that's where, we're looking for your guidance. I mean, obviously, the option, and I would turn it to David. I don't know if you guys would be willing to consider applying for a variance to address that issue.
Yeah, we're looking at possibly, we'll address that if need be by moving the structure or going for the variance. But what I think the special magistrate, not to beat a dead horse, but, well, maybe I shouldn't use the horse analogy. But the special magistrate, what they were trying to do is when that violation in that case was instituted, the county code applied. And so I think, it's a strange situation that the violation the case has lingered for so long, but it has because of the moratorium, and then there was an abeyance of all violations in the town in 2009. So he's recognizing that when this case was instituted, the county code allowed this use, so he then ordered us to comply with the county code provision that applied to our property, and that's what we did. And we spent a significant amount of money going through this process for months and months and months with the town. As the town got comfortable with their process, we had to come back and forth with traffic studies, site plan application, multiple requirements, based on the understanding that
We would listen to it, not that it would be approved.
Understood,
couldn't tell you
and I'm not implying that
Okay.
it should have been, but, my point is, we have a business owner that bought the property under the county code, the use was permitted, I don't think it's anyone's intention to put people out of business. And I think that they've been trying to play by the rules and do the right thing, and I think Mark and Jim could attest to this. My client and myself have been cooperative, and they've been great in turn. And we've really tried to do the right thing here and work together to resolve this in the best possible light. And when you really think about it, this use, and I understand from an outside view, it may seem as a very intense use. But when you think about it, this property lies dormant for most of the day. I mean, the employees arrive between 6:15 and 6:45, they're out of there. There's only 2 employees on the property during the day. When the workers come back, it's between 4 and 5, and then they vacate the property. So all day, the property essentially lies dormant. okay? There's only 13 vehicles on the property. They're not large trucks. They're typical pickup trucks with landscape trailers. Now that there's gonna be a nursery component, the use is gonna be further buffered from the outside. So, we're really trying to do the right thing here, and appreciate your consideration.
Are we finished with the staff report and the applicant?
Well, I'm not going over the staff recommendation because we do have several conditions, recommended conditions.
All right, what page on that?
Yeah, that page 6. Staff recommending approval we have a list of 8 conditions, but we also would like to add 2 additional conditions to that list, so we'll end up with 10. The first condition is related to the fact that the town's site plan approval process is extremely involved and extremely difficult and costly. And we did waive some of the site plan requirements because of the fact that the applicant is essentially not going to be building any structures. He's not going to be putting any parking areas. He's not going to be making drainage improvements. He's not going to be taking any vegetation off the property. So all of the site plan application requirements that related to studies that were related to those activities, we waived. So, but we want to put a condition in there that if they undertake those activities in the future, that they have to come back and meet those site plan requirements. And that's essentially what condition number 1 is. As is number 2. Number 2 says that if you're going to be clearing any trees, you have to comply with the town's native tree preservation ordinance. Number 3, condition number 3 is related to the traffic concurrency letter that the applicant got from Palm Beach County. They got concurrency subject to the condition that no additional building permits be issued after 2013. So we added that in there based on the condition of the traffic concurrency from Palm Beach County. And the condition number 4 is that the vegetative waste operation consists solely of importing, grinding, and on-site use of materials. Condition number 5.
Yeah, but Grace, you recognize.
Thank you. I think that there should be something in here, and I know it implies it in number 5, that states that it should be connected to what the day-to-day activity is. Like if you go out and you're doing whatever yard lawn maintenance you're doing, that's the only waste that you can bring back.
Right.
So I think that should, whatever language you come up with should be in number 4, that is very clear.
Right. Okay. How about if we say vegetative waste operation shall consist solely of importing, grinding, and on-site use of materials generated by the landscape maintenance operation?
Yes.
Okay, number 5, fees shall not be charged to import materials, and that's not saying that a portion of their landscape maintenance business doesn't include fees that are related to bringing the waste materials back. That's a condition that means that they can't charge. They can't accept and charge for waste generated by other activities other than their landscape maintenance business.
Is there anyone in the gallery today, John, maybe you can address this, running a large nursery operation as you do, is all of the plant material that you What turns into waste, is that used on site?
Yeah, what we do is we grind it up actually with a tractor and either a bush hog or a finish mower, and we use it to build up the property. Now, that's most of the root-bound material and topsoil from unsuccessful plants. The top vegetation, we have a burn permit, and I'll periodically burn. And we also continuously maintain a fill-up of waste management, or Waste Pro container.
Container, so you do
Yeah.
containerize it for dumpsters?
Yeah, we have a container that goes to the dump. We have a burn operation, we have a grind operation, but we keep it on site. And actually, even though I've had a couple of long days and I'm a little bit tired, I was particularly listening to what you were just saying about taking non-self-generated waste and grinding it up. I recently filed a concern with the code on a property on A Road that is becoming a landscaper's dump. Mike Siafi is in federal prison as of October 2nd for tax problems. But that site is still being operated, but it's being operated ostensibly as a grind and topsoil operation, but the vegetation that's been allowed to grow up has covered up their topsoil for sale sign. And it looks to me as though they're renting the property, they don't own it, and they're gonna leave a horrible mess there because they're not keeping up with the grinding, and there's just a tremendous amount of landscape waste that's being built up.
Well, technically, that's a transfer station. I think this is what the applicant is trying to avoid here. Is
Right.
the appearance of a transfer station,
Right.
because that does require solid waste authority.
Correct.
Because bushel stops have, fallen into the crack. You're familiar with bushel stop operations, Lantan and Delray and other places. Because they've fallen into that problem, of being essentially a transfer station. So I think it's a little far-fetched in my mind that all of the yard debris that your 14 trucks, 15 trucks,
13 trucks.
13 trucks, can bring back, and they average.
Those 13 trucks, I mean, there's included in there are service vehicles, cars, so.
I know, but the landscape maintenance
Probably,
operation.
I think 5 or 6 of the actual.
So, it's, to me, it's, it just seems strange, to try to even complete it, unless you're, going out and buying a whole bunch of line, to spread over this stuff so it deteriorates quicker,
I mean,
And it just some technical things.
Okay.
Okay, condition number 6 was recommended by fire rescue. They recommended a Knox box, which is essentially a lock box with a key in it, to be put on the front gate in case of a fire at night. Or if one of the vehicles is blocking the gate, that they can get in.
Which they do every night.
Okay, condition number 7 relates to the rear setback issue. And we're stating that needs to be resolved by one of 4 means. Either relocate the building to comply with the AR setback of 50 feet. Number 2, obtain a variance under Article 150 of the ULDC. And a determination by the town council that the structure is a legal non-conforming use pursuant to section 7510, or remove the non-conforming structure. And I've talked to Mr. Coviello about that, and we're going to try to have an answer as to which of those 4 will be pursued prior to this going to the council.
I just mentioned something about the waste spot.
Sure.
I think here, we don't have to guess as to whether it's working or not. I mean, we've been in operation for since 2006, and so clearly what they're doing, the amount of waste that they're taking in is not overtaking the whole property, so it's working, is my point.
Okay, condition number 8, we can probably strike that. As of the time I wrote the staff report, we didn't have documentation that the fire hydrant out in front of the property met the minimum pressure requirement, and we just got that the other day, so we can strike condition number 8. And just within the last week, we did get another request from the health department to have a licensed septic contractor go out and take a look at the septic tank to see if it was adequately sized to meet the needs of the business. Because the main structure on the property was at one time a single-family residence, and the septic tank was put in at that time. The health department wanted to see if the septic tank was adequate to accommodate the business. A contractor went out and did determine that the septic tank was adequately sized. However, the drain field is not adequately working. So we're proposing that condition number 9 be added, that the septic tank drain field shall be repaired and declared to be operational by a certified septic tank contractor. And we're proposing condition number 10, which gets back, I guess, to the question of is a nursery going to ever occur on site. Number 10, business tax receipts shall be obtained for wholesale nursery landscape maintenance business and provided to the town. Just, I guess, sort of a indicator by the applicant that business is going to occur on the site. And with those conditions, staff recommends approval of the proposed site plan.
Okay, hear from the applicant. Did you have any more to add, Dave?
No, other than we accept those conditions, perfectly fine with us. I was going to run through the site plan, but I think I've already outlined the operations and how it works.
Anyone in those attending want to speak to this matter? Chair recognizes John.
Yeah, I've had some experience with Valley Crest, and they are a professional organization. They're not, there are a lot of amateur landscape operations, but Valley Crest, has a public and private customer list for significant operations, and I've been familiar with their operation in Stewart, and to some extent, to less extent, the operation here, but they are professionally managed and operated, and it's not relying on an individual or someone that is in the business but is not as careful about their business practices and commitments as I think Valley Crest is. So I would say they're a quality operation.
All right. Marge, Chair recognizes Marge on.
Yes, I was wondering, you called it Magic. Is Valley Crest Magic the same?
Magic Properties.
Yeah, is the owner of the property, but Valley Crest is the company that owns Magic Properties.
Okay. In 2006, when the property was bought, it was an equestrian facility. They had the stalls and they had horses there. I don't remember it ever having nursery products on the property at all. And at the time it was bought, I approached the people and asked them what they were putting in there, and they told me a landscaping nursery. And I said, I don't see any plants being planned. And they've never come. So since 2006, they've been conveying the concept that it would be a nursery, and it never appeared. So I'm glad to see that one of the conditions is that you're going to have to verify that it's going to be there. Another concern I have is that tub grinder, if the one at F Road and Okeechobee is allowed to be operating, and this one is allowed to be operating, I think it's impacting Farley Road much more than it should. Farley Road is the property that butts right up on it, south of this property. So 2 grinders going on, if there's not control and limitations on the hours of operation of this grinder, it could become a point of displeasure with the Farley Road. The traffic, sometimes that becomes an issue. You know, it's dark in the morning. What provisions are being made so that an accident isn't going to happen? Are you going to put in extra lighting for the dark hours when your vehicles are coming out or going in? Those are my concerns.
Thank you. Ron, the chair recognizes Ron Sherrill.
Marge covered quite a few things that are constructed with the traffic flow. And like you said, it lays dormant during the daytime, but here's where we have our problems, okay? We have our problems in the morning now since it's pitch black on Okeechobee Boulevard. And we have our problems in the evening when they're coming in from their jobs and stuff, and they're calling it quits, and then they're coming and going home, and when they go home, they're in a hurry. The one thing that bothers me is I personally don't like the idea of them going out, making a living, trimming trees and doing lawn maintenance and stuff, and then bringing that material back in the Loxahatchee and storing it. I'm a retired firefighter of 31 years. Spontaneous ignition comes from piles that get hot because they're being stored. And Mr. Young man over there said something about we require, when people get horse manure and stuff, they have a certain time limit. It has to be leveled out, and we only allow so much. I personally think your landscape company, they're making money off that material by hauling it, first of all, and doing the maintenance. I think they should be made to take that to the county dump, and that's where they should unload it. I'm getting to the point where I just don't like material and stuff like that being unloaded in Loxahatchee and then being stockpiled. Now, no matter what you say, 100 foot by 200 foot is a big area, 15 foot high. Now, eventually, you know, you're going to run out of room, and you can't spread it over the property because those trucks and stuff cannot park in mulch like that. It just doesn't work. They get stuck. So I know that's not going to happen. I personally don't think that you're going to put a nursery in there that's going to be better management practices and stuff. The other thing that bothers me is that when y'all had the opportunity to go to the county and get a permit, they didn't, okay? And they didn't do it for a reason, okay? And now you're in a position where to continue on, you have to comply because of the code violations. And I'm going to be interested to see if we allow it as a council and as a town. I'm going to be interested on how fast that nursery comes in. And that's back to the catch-all. The deal, common sense tells me that for you to make this work, only a little small percentage of your property has to be nursery. And the only reason you're going to put the nursery in and why you haven't done it in the past is because you have to. And it's just to make this work. I'm looking for businesses that work in Loxahatchee to put something back into Loxahatchee. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but in Valley Crest, they are a very popular business. They're strong in Orlando. They're strong all over. One question I wanted to ask you was, in Palm Beach County, are there other locations where they set up shop at? I personally would like to see how their other locations complied to how they're treating Loxahatchee groves. Do you know of any other locations that I could personally check out?
I can provide you with addresses.
Okay, if you can provide the town with some other addresses where they're doing the same thing, they're doing the lawn maintenance, they're bringing it in, they're dumping it, they're storing it, that would be beneficial to me as a council member because I'll be asking some questions when we bring it in front of the council.
We can get you that information.
Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you, Ron. Bring it back to the board. Keith, any comments, questions?
Maintenance building of 2,200 square feet, primary location for repair and maintenance of landscape equipment and machinery. I assume the machinery's
Lawnmowers.
lawnmowers,
Yeah,
whatnot.
no vehicle maintenance is done on site.
Where do you store your fuels for your various equipment?
In the various storage buildings, here and here. And there's existing fuel pumps on the property right here.
Above ground or below ground tanks?
These are above ground.
And those have been permitted placement of,
There was some discussion of that at the meeting that we had, the joint meeting yet. It's of a size that I don't think has to have a permit. It's
That's
small
fine.
enough that it doesn't need a permit.
are there containment, spillage containment devices around those tanks?
That I don't know. Well, I can tell you that back prior to the application, we had a large staff meeting out at the facility. And at that meeting, fire rescue was there, and the health department was there, and the solid waste authority was there. And they had a chance to look around the site, and there was no issues related to that raised at that time, nor did all of those agencies also serve on the town's DRC, and they didn't raise any issues on that either. But if you have any specific questions that you want me to look into before it goes to council, I'll definitely do
No,
that.
I'm just trying to get educated on
Sure.
the activities of the property.
Yeah.
And there, respectfully, sir, this, I understand your concern with potential issues with fire and the waste pile, but, we can't ignore the fact that this has been operating as is for 6 years and there haven't been any issues. And so nothing is going to change with respect to this other than incorporating the nursery component.
Well, you say there hadn't been any issues, you got a code violation, okay, and there'll come a time where you can't just keep stockpiling stuff and
But for 6
you're
years,
not hauling it off.
for 6 years, it's
Right.
been working.
But see, each year, it seems to be getting busier and busier now. And we, like I said, the biggest problem I have is you hauling it in and stockpiling it there. It's like John said on A Road, I see what they're doing on A Road. They're gonna leave all that stuff they got stockpiled one of these days, and they're gonna leave it for us to have to take care of. And it would be a whole lot easier for me to approve something like this if I knew that you make the money off the landscape business. My brother's in the landscape business. Okay, you're making money off of it. Okay, it's a little bit more of a hassle, but to me, that landscape should be carried to the dump. And when your trucks come back, they should come back empty. And that's just how I feel on it, no matter how long you've been in business. And when you say that you've been in business since 2006, and I realize that we put the moratorium on it, but before, you had an opportunity to get with the county and get a permit. For some reason, they didn't, and that's in the past. And the thing that bothers me with the magistrate is that I don't believe that the magistrate had all the eggs in one basket, I call it. In other words, I don't think she knew what the county would have required if it went to them. And, some of the things, well, the one thing that the county required was that that the majority of the property be a nursery. And you knew that, even though you didn't do it with the county. Now you're looking to the town for an approval. It would have been to your benefit if you started in 2006 and you knew that was the county regulations and requirements. To me, it would have been to your benefit if you would have had that majority of the property already into a nice nursery where you were doing business off of it. But that's just the way I look at it.
Yeah, not going to the county when they initially bought the property, not realizing that they needed Board of County Commission approval, I can assure you wasn't an intentional thing. I mean, I know you spoke to Valley Crest's reputation, but I represented them, and I can assure you it wasn't intentional.
Well, I'm hoping if this does get approved that you concentrate on getting that nursery in as quick as you can.
We'll be obligated.
And that you have proof that it's productive, in other words.
Okay,
Okay, bringing it back to board, Keith, do you have any other questions on this?
Not at this time.
Barry?
Thank you, Dennis. I think the biggest struggle that I'm having is the process, which is not a choice that you made. It was dictated by the special magistrate. And I feel uncomfortable that we're pulling some standards from the county and then we're using others from the town. I think that if we're supposed to be trying to make this legal, that we should base it on the standards of when it could have become legal. Because in 2006 or 7 or 8, for that matter, they could have gone for a special use permit. When things changed in the town, they would have been a legal non-conforming use. Everything would have been in operation as it is today, including setbacks and so forth and so on. So based on process, I would be more comfortable if we were using the standards of what the county would have used to approve a Class B special use permit. I think that's what we should be doing, regardless of what, I mean, special magistrate said fix this. So that's how we, in my opinion, should be fixing this. I think that if you do that, and you start out compliant with what the county standards were, that makes the transition a little more comfortable, a little more palatable. Because you keep saying we've been in operation since 2008, we're working, nothing's broken. The second thing is the fact that the primary use is now becoming an accessory use. And I found in the staff report, Jim, on page 9, where the county defines an accessory use and structure shall not exceed 30% of the gross floor area ratio and/or business receipts of the principal use, whichever is more restricted. So in my mind, that should be, if this moves forward, a condition of approval. Because if we don't permit this, this is not allowed, but we're trying to take something and grandfathering it in, well, this would have been a requirement back then. And I'm sure it was a standard that would have had to have been met for the Class B to have been approved. Again, the goal here is not, you know, to close a business down that's been operating, but it's to try to help you do what your client should have done however many years ago. Since we don't define it, we go back to what the county defines. Because I truly believe this is your operation is what it is, you're a reputable company. We're not, you know, a fly-by-night guy who is actually charging people and dumping stuff. I believe, and I believe what was said about your company. But we have to protect ourselves. And if the lawn maintenance is supposed to be an accessory use, then that should not be where the business is generating most of its money, because that's a primary use. And I do not believe a wholesale nursery is going to be brought in potted plants and become a primary use. And I'm not saying it's not your intention to make that a primary use, but that's not what you do. Your lawn maintenance, that's what you do. So I really do believe that we have to define primary use and accessory use, and if it has to be connected to a percentage of dollar amount, you know, in the jurisdiction that I work in, it's 51%. 51% of your sales is your primary use. Anything, you know, else that you do is accessory, which would include video games and, you know, ATM machines or whatever. So really, that is really important to me to feel comfortable approving this. Hours of operation, I know I saw it in here somewhere, and it said like to 8 o'clock at night in some locations. I agree with what Marge said, and I had it written down. There absolutely has to be hours of operation for the mulching and chipping. It should not be allowed at any time. It needs to be defined as a condition of approval when they can.
You have a recommendation on that, or?
Well, I think it would need to be, you know, after 9 and before 4, because people do not want to be home. I know I would not want to be home while that was taking place. So, you know, you don't want it happening before 9 a.m. in the morning, and you don't want it happening after 4 in the afternoon, is my personal,
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday, yeah. And as regarding the accessory use, I think the setback for that one building, I think that kind of goes in if the board chooses to recommend approval and the council decides that they're going to approve this based on the fact that it was existing. I think that has to be brought in as part of it. I think that that should be considered a non-conforming use. I mean, a non-conforming setback is what it would be. The building would be non-conforming based on the setback. I don't think a separate application for a variance would be fair for the applicant, because this is what it was.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's a whole big package.
Yeah, we've been working on how to document that, and we have found some aerials as a 06 that show the building in the same place, but we don't really have
A survey?
specific, criteria that meet the requirements of our code.
Well, was their title insurance done when they bought the property?
Yeah, we can get a survey, but I was.
I mean, was their title insurance done?
Yeah, yes.
So that would have shown up,
That you met the setbacks.
that you weren't being set back to.
No, but zoning in Florida, title insurance doesn't cover zoning matters, it's excluded. But we do have aerials that show that this existed way before.
I mean, is it
way
a
before-
building that could easily be relocated?
We're gonna look at it to
Is
see.
it like on a
But this
foundation,
existed
you know,
before, well
on
before
little
2000.
wheels that you can do that
It's an old
for?
one.
It's not under this.
Okay.
None of them is.
I just think that this is a whole package. Yeah, yes, there you go. And that's really it. Good job, Jen.
Well,
Explaining.
this is a tough one, because when I was sitting on the council, I had several complaints from residents who live on the western side of the town about the traffic congestion at that location every morning. And, so it's always been, and I told that person, I don't know what it was, I forget now, just to file a complaint, so that's probably where it came from.
Mr. Chairman, I know they did a traffic study as part of this application, and I believe they actually went out and did traffic counts. And they determined that the peak hour for this business was not the normal peak hour. So I think we have some documentation as to.
I know, Jim, I sat on the county's planning and zoning board for 4 or 5 years, and traffic studies is a little science.
Yeah, well, these are actual counts. These are actual traffic counts.
I know. Of that particular day,
I was one of the people living west of so I know exactly what you're talking about. There would be confusion, cars would be pulling in, you'd have guys standing out front, stopping the traffic so the trucks could all get out, and that's frustrating for the people heading east because they want to get to where they need to go to as well, so.
Anyway, so yeah, it's.
That wouldn't have come into play in the traffic.
It is just anecdotal, not any science behind it, just complaints that you hear.
Mr. Chairman, one more question. Keith, was there any specific information that you wanted us to try to collect on the fuel tank?
Well, it was just, it won't be necessary. I was just trying to formulate some ideas.
Okay.
I think all the points that have been made by staff, by our members of the public, and from the applicant are all valid points. I think the overriding thing that we really need to consider is in the ULDC, section 20-020, as these operations are expressly prohibited. And you glean parts of your report from the current ULDC, but the overriding logic behind this is the magistrate saying, make it fit with what the county had. I think Grace brings up an excellent point, is if that's what they're mandating from, which I think we need to have an opinion on this, is that is that we stick with the county's, ruling at the time. So I'm certainly not gonna tell you to go back and get approval from the DCC, but I think all the points that Grace made are very valid. Because this technically could go as smoothly as just being a legal non-conforming use. Well, when you sell the property, it gets sold as a single-family residence, period. That's what it's used for. And I noticed in the property tax that the use code for this is a single-family residence. It's not even agriculture. And you've been there for 6 years. And that's just amazing that that no one went in there and made an application for an ag exemption. You're not getting I don't think you're getting homestead exemption. I mean, that's open up a whole new bag of worms. No, there's no exemption.
Now, I don't know if landscape maintenance businesses can get ag exemptions.
No, it should be a landscape, as an ag operation. Because I know the other landscape operations that are in town, that are operated, out of the backyard of the Corral family on C Road, they have an ag exemption for part of the property. And they also have their little, landscaping operation. Certainly not to the scale of what you guys are, But, so this is a tough one. I think that, my recommendation would be is that we, either, ask Mike, our attorney, Cirillo, to opine on this. Because we're mixing, one set of rules with another set of rules. My feeling on it today is is that somebody form a motion and we vote on it. Go from there. I'm not really, for this as it sits right now, because I think we have, it's like mixing metaphors. We're not trying to, put you out of business. Like to find a way to make it work for you. I think going the legal non-conforming, would be the simplest. That way you can run your business, and when you're done running your business there, you sell it as a single-family residence. If there's a way to do that, that would be my recommendation.
Okay, I don't know if the magistrate ever considered that, but.
Well, we did it for John Choquette.
Yeah, I'm not saying it can't be done.
But in essence, that's what he's doing. I mean, he's treating it as a non-conforming use under the current code and allowing it under the prior code. The only difference is he's applying the development standards under the current code to bring more into compliance.
If we go that way, and then you've got to, show that 30% as a secondary use, you can only have 30% of your cash flow coming from your landscaping operation. That is not going to happen.
No, I'm saying
a wholesale nursery on 2.3 acres, isn't going to generate enough cash.
No. What he's saying is for the development standards, he's saying that the use is grandfathered in, but every other standard is under the current town
But the
code.
problem with that is you can't grandfather in a prohibited use. You just can't. And I'm sure Mike would back me up on that. You cannot grandfather in a use that is prohibited.
No.
Under our current land use does not allow for it.
Understood.
So we can't, and this is where I'm having, and I would hope that someone would say, let's take 30 days and get these ducks in a row so we don't have to vote on this right now, realizing we are only a recommending board. You get that, I get that. But I think the process is so important here because the special magistrate is trying to take a use that was allowed as a Class B special use permit with standards and regulations under the county code, which you may or may not have been approved for. We don't know that yet. We won't. We would never know that unless we do an analysis. We have not done that. We took pieces And I don't think that, I don't think that's a good way to do it. I really don't. And if this is his order, if the special magistrate order, and without having it in front of us, we don't know, says to take 120 days to obtain necessary site plan and zoning approvals to include a wholesale nursery as the primary use, the answer is, I'm sorry, but you can't do what it is you want because it's prohibited. It doesn't say anything about legal nonconformity. And I don't know if it's mentioned in the final order, the magistrate's order.
Yeah, he cites the provisions in the county code relative to a landscape maintenance company and
Which has no, pertinence to us, because we don't use that.
no,
So
understood.
either we're going by that to keep you operating and moving, or we have to go by what we have. And I think it's a conflict to say that if we're gonna use our code that says you're prohibited, wink wink, but you're a wholesale nursery as a primary use, to me, I'm uncomfortable with that. I think it's cleaner. We're gonna say, okay, shame on you, you didn't get the license you were supposed to, but if we're going to review this, we know you are operating, we know that you're there, we have evidence, we have proof, and yes, we think as a town, your business should continue, then we need to analyze what your operation is underneath that county code. Because we don't have standards for what it is that he's doing. We don't. And yeah, we can put special conditions of approval, which the county may or may not have done, depending on what would happen when you went before them. But we don't have we don't have a category for you. County had a category for you as a legal nonconformity. We can analyze what you're doing under those standards so that you remain a legal nonconformity. And my understanding is once you're a legal nonconformity, that goes with the land. And as long as you're operating, and it may be different in the town, but as long as you're operating continually, that if you were to sell the property, the use goes with it. It doesn't cease to exist.
That's not the way we set it up for the town.
For major use nonconformities, minor, or are they all just plain straight out nonconformities?
In other words, this is the use code is as a single family home. They're operating, this is the same with Jean Chouquet. Is at the northeast corner of F and Oakey. And he has truck storage there for his emergency removal service, a mulching operation, and but when he decides to move back to the farm.
And I think correct me if I'm wrong, under the code, I think it was, if you had a non-conforming use, you had, as of the date of the adoption of the code, you had to have a special exception approved by the town within more than 8 months. Which I don't know whether the moratorium was still in effect at that time, which would be conflicting.
Yeah, you had 8 months to apply for
You
the
could have
special
noticed,
exception.
right, and I don't know if you had noticed of that, but.
So the 120 days ends when?
That's been extended, I think, after that.
Yeah, that's been extended several times.
Oh, so on January 12th, it was 120 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, the special magistrate has been working with us, because we've been, believe it or not, for the past 6 months going through this process of recycling. So we've been,
No, I believe it. I deal with this stuff.
so we've been acting in good faith, and I think he's been extending based upon that good faith.
We have definitions of accessory use and principal use in our code, but it's not nearly as specific as the county did. The primary criterion is the area of an accessory use shall be subordinate to that of the principal use.
I love planners.
That's all it says.
Anybody want to make a motion on the board? Tabling is.
We can't we can request that we can request that of the applicant that he agree to a 30 days, but.
Well, it's going to go to the board. We either send it on to the board saying that we approve of staff's recommendation, or we send it on to the board saying that we don't approve staff's recommendation.
I personally hate to send a message of denial to the board because it's the process that I'm hung up on. It's not necessarily the use and what it is that they're doing. It's how we're getting there that I think could put the town in jeopardy without, you know, Mike weighing in on, can the special magistrate do this, number one? And number two, if he can, should we be using county standards or should we be just moving forward with it, with exactly what Jim did? I mean, that's a really simple question.
Let me offer a suggestion. I think you have a couple options. You could vote it, you know, up or down, if that's one of your options. If you want to try to table it, you know, you can do that and we try to get more answers and see what we can come up with. I'm a little concerned with your reliance on going to Mike and asking Mike to overrule the special magistrate or get into the particulars of the special magistrate's decision because he really does have jurisdiction of the matter, and then you're putting Mike into a situation of trying to second guess the special magistrate, which I don't think is a good thing. I'd rather keep Mike out of it from that standpoint. You know, because special magistrate has one focus here, and that's to gain compliance. You're, as a good planning and zoning board, you're raising a whole other set of issues which are applicable. I agree. So,
Who's the attorney that sits in on the special magistrate hearings?
It was not when I was there.
Because generally, the municipality should have representation so that the magistrate doesn't overstep their boundaries or make recommendations that they actually,
we normally prosecute the case. If we need the attorney, we bring the attorney and prosecute. But it's not required that you have an attorney.
no, not required.
There's like 5 different models to use for
Yeah.
components. For the attorney to go with.
Well, I think, seeing no urgency to, you know, have a motion passed is that we just simply tell Jim to take our concerns with you to the town council when this does come up to the town council. And I'll watch the agenda packs and be there that night.
Well, are you okay with a tabling to try to work out some of these issues, or?
Tabling the board's
The
recommendation.
board decided to not take action tonight, but to bring it back.
I mean, I don't have an issue with that. My only concern is we're really going back to the special master a number of times, and I think he's sort of at the end of his rope with patience, so I don't want, and there's substantial fines. You know, not that I think they stopped running or in bank right now, but that's my concern. If any further delay,
Well, on the further delay, I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, I can obviously indicate at the next time it comes up that you're still pursuing it. I mean, you know, planning and zoning board has every opportunity to try to get to the bottom of it and make the determination that they feel comfortable with. So, again, you're operating within good faith, so I don't think you have a problem with that. You're very flexible in that regard.
No, especially if staff comes and speaks on your behalf.
Right, right.
You know, they're supporting, and the board had some concerns and.
I mean, I think it's in everybody's best interest if there are some issues that you're still uncomfortable with, and we can try to work them out. You know, and that means going back and doing some additional research back to the original order and what had occurred. You know, if we could talk to our code enforcement vendors and, you know, just try to bring back as much more information to you that might make you feel comfortable in terms of making your decision. I mean, I think that's appropriate.
okay, no, that's acceptable.
And I would just make one more, and I don't know, you know, Jim, but I think in the staff report, it really isn't compliant with the comp plan because the use is not permitted, but I think there should be language in there that goes back to the fact that it was a legal use underneath the code. I mean, that background has to be in there. I think it's important to, somewhere in the report, that recognize that you would be a legal non-conforming use, had a special use permit been approved, and that while the use based on today's comp plan, of the town's comp plan, is not consistent, it may have been consistent with the county's comp plan, because it's not. I mean, if the use is prohibited, it can't be consistent.
No, yeah, it has to be based on a vested or a grandfather's right. And I think it needs to be noted that, you know, we had the right to go in for the special permit and couldn't do so because of the moratorium. So I think the moratorium needs to also be brought into the discussion.
I would agree with you on that, because I think that really tells the whole story, so that even if we're not basing it on the county standards, which I know I've said it 10 times, I really think we should be, because that kind of that removes us from any responsibility. That removes us from anyone saying, well, you just said that this is consistent with your comp plan, even though it's not permitted, so I want to do it too. So I think we have to keep hanging that on the fact that it's a use that was existing, they had the opportunity to apply, whatever reason you didn't. And make sure that it is consistent with what the standards would have been for that operation.
On those conditions that, Jim, that you had there on your 10 conditions on page 7, I'd request that you add that we remove the yard waste mulching and storage, and just have them dump it off at the transfer station and not stockpile their waste material in town. I agree with Ron and with John on those conditions. Because I think that's, and some of the points that Keith brought up as far as whitefly and other pests that are, you know, in the county that we may or may not be experiencing now, and it's just part of doing business.
Would you be amenable to some other condition less than that? In other words, maybe possibly reducing the size of the pile?
Well, you know, we're a very unique community, and we like to keep it that way. But we also, you know, don't want to become, as the county had treated us, as a dumping ground. You know, so I think that, you know, bringing your materials in and putting it in a, what do they call those things that, you know,
Dump grinder?
no, one of those boxes that solid waste, that you know, a container system, you know, where they come up, like what John was talking, what do they call those things, John?
No, I know what you're talking about.
A dumpster, yeah, put it in a
30 or 40 yard dumpster.
30 or 40 yard dumpster.
Compost. Is that
A
what you're-
dumpster, no, a dumpster where, you know,
Oh.
where you guys don't have to stop anyplace special, they just come and put it in the dumpster. This is what Botanica does, that's out on G Square. They've got a couple of big dumpsters in there that they dump all their yard waste in that, and then the, you know, the truck comes in every once in a while and picks it up and takes it to the solid waste. You know.
Mr. Chairman, rather than coming up with a specific condition right now, how about if we sit down between now and the next meeting and see what we can come up with in terms of something different?
Well, something, if you're going to do that, you know, figure out a way you're to do it. Grace has suggested, or, you know, since we have a ULDC in a comp plan, is just go through and say, okay, you know, we're not grandfathering you in, it's just a non-conforming use.
No, I was talking about the issue of the pile.
Yeah.
And the pile, I don't like the
I
pile.
would like to add that there's no such thing as a little contamination. To bring something in, set it to a dumpster, and use it as a relay station, you know, or a transit station, and take it back out. I would prefer it not come into the town of Waxahachie at all. You know, there are approved landfills where it can be dropped at. We don't have to be a part of that system.
I agree with Keith on that. Chair recognizes John Ryan.
Just as a background comment, we do a fair amount of work with a combination nursery, lawn maintenance, landscape operation in Coral Springs. From what I've seen, and I've been up there on a pretty good bit, it is important for a large landscape maintenance operation, which isn't just lawn mowing, to have a place to regularly, day in, day out, bring material, waste material. The operation in Coral Springs, they have a pile, but it is regularly removed. It's kind of like saying, cost and efficiency wise, it makes sense for them to bring it in on their trucks and put it in a pile, and then have an efficient, large-scale operator come in with a big truck and a grapple and pick the stuff up and take it to the dump. To have individual trailers making individual trips to, a lands, a site
Transfer station.
a transfer station is inefficient. And if you have this other operation where it's only piled up for a short period really, and then taken out in bulk, that seems to be more economical. I just would mention that because I've seen the operation in Coral Springs, and it is an alternative to having every single trailer take it to some transfer station or other site.
Well, Dave, if you can supply our town manager with a couple of other sites
Sure,
that Valley Crest has here locally, I'd like to drive by and see them as well.
sure.
You can get that to me, Mark, when he gets that to you. I appreciate it.
And I think Jim's idea is a good one, in light of that comment. I mean, there are ways maybe we can come to something that's agreeable to everyone instead of just no pile.
I was a contractor, owned construction business for over 20 years in several gated communities. I was not allowed to put any construction debris on site at any time. I had to have a truck on sites that I was working at and remove it daily. It was the cost of doing business. It's an unfortunate thing, but there are costs that one has to absorb to run a business.
Right, and we do, off our job sites, obviously, we do take it off our job sites and bring it to our property, and it's legally permitted to remain there, but I understand what you're saying.
Wow, I thought this was gonna be the short one on the list.
Yeah, it's 54 pages. Okay, so are we done with this one? Or do we need a motion?
I would say do a motion to table.
Do I hear a motion to table?
I would make a motion to table it until our next meeting, okay with everyone? Is that agreeable to the
Yes,
applicant?
that's
Until our
fine.
next meeting to address the issues that the board
When would that next meeting be,
presented to
Mark?
staff.
Second Thursday in December, which.
That's not Christmas yet.
No.
Can you believe what it comes
Oh, December 13th, Mr. Chair.
December 13th.
To table it to December 13th.
I think that will give us adequate time to put it together.
All right.
I'll second the motion to table.
All right, without objection, tabled until December 13th.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right, what's up next, Jim? You got 10 minutes.
The
second half starting,
Next item is the needs of zoning and rating something in that presentation.
Braden Garrett, I'm planner, or planning technician. This item is administrative, town initiated rezoning. I believe you guys have seen a couple of these already. As you know, there's some properties in town that have not been changed over from county zoning to town zoning designation. And these two properties are just a couple of them. One's a 5.9 acre property at 14579 Southern Boulevard. And the other is the adjoining 1 acre property, just identified as Southern Boulevard, with no buildings on it currently. In order to develop or even have any new tenants in the 14579 property, the property must be zoned for zoning town designation. It's currently zoned general commercial, CG, which is a county designation, as I said, and proposing to change that to commercial low, CL, which is a town designation. As I said, that would be in accordance with the comprehensive plan and the town's ULDC. The staff recommends approval of this administrative rezoning.
Yeah, just one further note, Mr. Chair and members of the board. As you know, with the 1985, the Growth Management Act was adopted, and all communities were supposed to, and did do, new comprehensive plans governing the regulatory climate and land use climate within their communities. One of the things was the development of a land development code that would be inclusive of zoning, and that would be consistent with the comprehensive plan. And, you know, our town has an interesting history because at the time we were trying to develop our unified land development code, and we did our comprehensive plan, we had a challenge. So there were a number of issues, and I think in 2010, town council felt that for a number of these properties, rather than to go ahead and do a mass administrative, city-initiated zoning process, that they would do them on a case-by-case basis for when there was development on a property in question. So as you see, we've had a couple where the property owners have said that there's no development yet, but they'd like to go ahead and come under the town's zoning, so if development is going to occur, they will be ready and they can accommodate it. In this case, and most of this case, you have the existing shopping center, so it's already there. But, you know, there are vacancies, and they certainly want to try to fill those vacancies, and obviously the town now having zoning authority, you know, it can't enforce county zoning. So we have talked with the owner of the center, and he's in agreement, and he's asked us to go ahead and move forward with this rezoning. So anytime we can continue to clean up any inconsistencies that we have between our comprehensive plan and town zoning, obviously it's a good idea to do so. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions you've got.
Keith, are you,
I have no questions.
okay, great. Yeah, the 5.9 acres, that's currently zone CG?
Yes.
You're just gonna change it to, okay, I don't have any problems with it at all. Any comments from the public on this one?
Where are the properties located?
It's the, you know, Boonies, you know, those,
Strip
the
center.
shopping center.
Just west of D Road, where the town office is in that plaza at Looney's.
Where the existing buildings are now?
Mhm.
Yes.
Well,
They're not-
the 5.9 acres actually stretches back on the property behind the post office and behind the AG.
Now, is that the one that we already discussed as a first town council and approved a development there years ago?
No, that's west of the gas station. John?
Yeah, the only thing I've seen occasionally there that gives me a little pause is the increased scale of the U-Haul rental operation that, you know, parks in the grassy area in addition to the designated paved parking area. You know, it
I
just
thought
looks
that
like-
one area was supposed to be what, stormwater retention, where the grassy area.
Yeah, that's the one, actually the 1 acre area that's used as the retention area.
It may just be occasional, but it looks like, you know, it's a little loose.
Well, with the correct zoning, we can give them a violation.
Well, that, just to answer that does give us, that particular use gives us some heartburn as well, because they have never even attempted to obtain a business tax receipt or zoning approval from us, and as you know, the way the town conducts the business on these kind of things, even though we're aware of it, unless we have a code complaint, we're not enforcing it, so We kind of coexist with them, and we're trying to be good neighbors, but that concerns us. I mean, there's signs there, they popped up without, again, trying to get any kind of approval. Your trucks all over the place, you're right, it's interesting.
Okay,
Well, I would make a motion to recommend approval of the town-initiated land use and zoning amendment.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Without objection, motion passes. All right, moving right along.
Mr. Chairman,
John?
one thing, even though you approved that as an accommodation to the owner, could you suggest to the owner that in his interest, he impose some reasonable restrictions on something that may get out of control?
Would that be something for code enforcement to look into?
I think somebody just ought to file a code complaint, and that would be taken care of.
Obviously, there will be some delicate conversations in the future.
But point taken, if you can just make a note of that in your report to the town when you meet with town council.
I would say, just for the information of the board, but I don't want to make light of it. We find ourselves in an interesting situation at times like that, because there's a couple of other code violations that we're aware of, but again, there's been no complaint, and so based upon the way we conduct code enforcement in the town, unless we get a complaint, we're kind of looking the other way. We have talked about the fact that without getting too bureaucratic about it and running out and starting to look for violations and trying to be proactive, that maybe in the future we might need to get some recommendations where certain types of violations would not need to follow the complaint rule.
Just like the massage parlor?
You said that, I did. But,
Did I heard about it?
And we'll try, we'll probably propose something like that in the near future, but we want to be very careful because we don't want to, we want to try to honor, what's been the town's policy and what's been the guiding vision in that, the town doesn't want to see code enforcement get out of control or become overly punitive.
I think that's a good suggestion. Are you handling the next one, Brandon?
No,
He just gets the easy ones, right?
I'm gonna pass it back over.
Yeah.
To the veteran.
Okay, the final item is a town-initiated amendment to the Land Development Code regarding residential, agricultural, sales and services businesses in the town. This came up as a result of a code enforcement complaint that was filed against several entities in town that were illegally selling hay from the property. The complaint was filed with the town, and at the June 5th council meeting, one of the owners of one of the businesses, the Ikes, stood up for the council and asked for some kind of consideration other than code enforcement action. And the town council then directed staff to come up with a game plan as to how to address this issue on a town-wide basis. And at the June 20th meeting, town management staff proposed a general outline of activities that it proposed to follow, which included limiting operations to residents of the property, restricting the operation to the current owners, and rather than vesting the use with the land, rather that use run with the land, requiring a business tax receipt and some other additional requirements consistent with the intent of the ULDC. So based on that general direction, staff has prepared a code amendment which commences on page 6 of the staff report. And I'll run through the different proposed revisions to the code. First is in addition to section.
You're not gonna read this whole
I
thing.
was just
to us,
gonna
are you?
say, if we all read it, does it, maybe
Yeah.
we,
Well, no, I wasn't gonna read them all. I was gonna go through some.
I think you should read.
Well, okay, I mean,
I'd
if you just want to ask questions.
see how nervous we get?
If you just want to ask questions, that's fine.
Okay, let's just ask questions.
Okay.
Greg?
I just wondered, do we have a list of home occupation as defined? You know, because these accessory uses would not be considered home occupation. So I'm just wondering, because we go back to the land use, and it talks about the policies that say we would allow this home occupation, but does it define it in the zoning code? And I meant to look it up, I didn't have a chance.
It's called the residential enterprise.
So, but do we define them as like, you know, like a music teacher?
We don't have a list of what those would entail.
So this would not fall under that?
This is specifically, from what I understand, is that.
Okay, I'm just asking, I mean, we live in an agricultural neighborhood, so you
Yeah.
really wouldn't have a
Yeah.
home occupation that,
Well, home occupations, number one, don't permit any employees. They don't permit.
oh, no employees, okay.
And they don't permit anybody to come to the home to transact the business either.
Okay,
You probably don't want to hear this, but this is kind of set up as an accessory, again, where the principal use is still the residential unit.
yeah,
And this would be an accessory to that.
that's what just got me a little confused, because they're, you know, generally, in my experience, home occupation allow for, you know, no more than two, you know, unrelated folks that live in the house, and you can have, you know, no advertising on the outside of what the business is, but you can have people come, like if you're a piano teacher, that's a home occupation, you can have up to 2 students. I mean, there are specific guidelines that keep the use on a much smaller impact, because this is a commercial use.
Yes.
In a residential, I mean, I understand it, but it's still a commercial use.
Yes, it is. It definitely is. And the council's direction was that we give some consideration for this business to locate in the town, and specifically those existing businesses.
You know,
I think it was a two-part thing. It was kind of designed to address those existing businesses so they could continue. And also it does provide for somebody else to do it, but with the caveat that Jim was talking about, where it's not your typical use where it's vested with the land. It's
right,
more or less
That's
related
good.
to
Right.
the occupants and the ownership of the property who would be conducting the use.
okay.
And we will endeavor to make sure that when we give business tax receipts, that we're going to keep a registry of these uses so we know who actually has those kind of uses in place.
Now, the hours of operation, again, here, for me, and I actually do live across the street, and I live I live on a, you know, quarter-acre lot. We have very small lots, which is unusual on my street. But across the street is a nursery that used to be operational, and, you know, had tractor trailers coming down our street on occasion, you know, at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they would wait until it opened. So 8 to 8 p.m., I don't own a horse, so I don't have the occasion to buy hay, so I'm just thinking, that just seems like a lot.
Yeah, I understand, and the reason for that was when I wrote this, I talked to the people that are actually running these businesses, and these are generally full-time businesses, these are part-time businesses,
Mhm.
and the people that run these businesses have other jobs.
Mhm.
So they, all of their clientele come before they go to work or after they come home.
Mm.
And so, I understand your concern, but if we're gonna be having some consideration for the existing businesses, if we restricted the hours to say 9 to 5, that essentially would put them out of business.
Okay. Do we limit the lot size?
Yeah, it's gotta be 5 acres.
Keith?
For my own self-edification, you indicated code enforcement complaint was filed. May I find out who the complainant was?
Yeah, the complainant was Beck Islip, who is the owner of the Red Barn.
Okay.
And at the time, he complained about two particular uses. That
Wellington
he,
Edge.
I'm sorry?
Wellington Edge.
No, well, 3 uses, you're right, I'm sorry, 3, I stand corrected, 3 uses. Wellington's Edge was one,
Flying Edge.
the Ikes were another, and then British Hay, when they were operating up on Okeechobee,
Mhm.
off of the property they were renting from Pat Hastings, or leasing, I should say.
All right. Red Barn is owners in a commercial zoning, I believe.
Yeah, I think his argument at the time was that he wanted to try to at least level the playing field in terms of the fact that he has
He has a tax,
requirements.
he has a tax rate that's different than people ever operating in a AR zoning designation, but has business tax receipts that allows them to do so. Okay. Limiting the operation to the residents of the property. That's understanding if I were to lease my property and someone would run around a hay sales business, they will not be allowed to do so.
That's true.
On that, along that same line, could then somebody contract with a hay maker, that's a word, to bring in their hay and sell it out of their truck and they get a cut?
If, I suppose that could be one way around it. I mean, the owner of the property has to have a homestead exemption, and he has to be the owner of that hay sales business.
Mhm.
That doesn't preclude him from having a deal with a hay distributor to bring it on site. And they
Well,
split
where
it
else
up.
would
We're
he get
calling
the
those
hay
hay
from?
makers, we're calling those hay makers.
Unless he has a haymaker on his property, he probably have to bring one in.
Under your general information, under purpose, you say limit scope to straw, hay, feed, and grain sales. Why do you list the word straw?
Why do you straw?
Why do you have straw specifically left?
Because there are two separate items. I mean, hay has its own definition, straw has its own definition.
Well, that's my next point. Straw is normally used as bedding, or to make jumps for a jump course. If we're going to allow straw bedding, why can't we allow the flake shavings and the pellet shavings beddings to be sold as well?
Well, we can. I mean,
I would like to see those added
okay.
to that list.
Okay. What, give me the exact language, just like to see it.
Well, I'm caught up with the word limited. I don't like the use of regulation becoming a restrictive tool. And so I would like to get rid of the word limit and say scope to include straw, pellet shavings, flake shavings, hay, feed, and grain.
I would suggest to include only, because we don't want at some point other items to be included.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
say,
exactly.
so if you,
Yeah, the
so,
council was fairly specific in that they didn't want to make the scope of this was fairly narrow.
Right.
they didn't give us a specific list of items that we.
That's a very good point, though,
Yeah.
Member Joyce, because at one point, we had taken a proposal to the town council,
Yeah.
attempting to help these folks. We were looking at the possibility of trying to create a conditional use and basically limit it to certain roadways. And we did have a provision like that in our proposal where we said, and similar products, I think is the way we said it. And I know some members of the public and some members of the council were a little concerned with if that might be opening the door to too much.
Mhm.
So we.
Yeah, I think-
Yeah, we don't want to create a retail outlet,
Right,
sure.
right,
Right.
right.
But like I said, personally, I don't like the word limited. It tells me you're trying to be restrictive.
Yeah. Keith,
Well, I personally feel that we ought to.
Where exactly were you in the staff report?
This is on page 2, your general information under section B, purpose, item number 4.
Okay,
Jim, you either have to put that in the definition or probably
yeah,
under 8060.
okay, now, no, I will say that one more time, so it's.
Scope to, let's see how, I appreciate the word only.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the word limited. So I'm gonna let you play with the verbiage, but basically the scope is to include straw, flake shavings, flake, F-L-A-K-E, pellet, P-E-L-L-E-T, shavings, hay, feed, grains. I also question food, supplements to grains, the different training supplements. Is that getting excessive?
I
That's
think it's
becoming more
getting
retail?
excessive, yeah,
Okay,
that's-
let's just strike that part then. Let's
Yeah,
strike that part.
I personally feel we just ought to leave it at feet,
Okay.
but, you know, that's where,
What's the difference between feed and grain?
no, that is feet.
Oh. Okay. I didn't know there was a difference between straw and hay, so,
That's because you're a city though.
yeah, I'm not, I don't have a horse.
Jim, it looks like you could put that in the definition where you say, places of business as an accessory use to the principal use of a single family engaged in the sale of the premises, and he uses the word there solely.
Mhm.
So if that's okay, I
Yes.
think that's okay, and then add the additional items that you've
Yes.
indicated, so
Right,
the
yeah.
definition will take care of it.
All right.
Okay.
Let's see. On page 3, section C, how does the proposed text amendment further purposes the comprehensive plan or other town codes? Item 3, policy 1.1.6, the town shall encourage the use of innovative land development regulations to enhance the rural atmosphere, reduce energy uses, and reduce greenhouse emissions. How does that relate to?
You don't have to drive out of town to get what you need.
Yeah.
That's basically saying, okay.
That's part of the.
I'm just trying to understand language.
Yeah.
Bear with me just one moment. Page 7, section F, activities requiring special exception approval. The following residential, agricultural, and services shall require a special exception pursuant. Then it lists use of trucks and semi-trailers for delivered to the plot, and use of semi-trailers visible from the street, storage. I saw somewhere else in it that you were asking for all these storage trailers, which is going to be limited to a total of 2, to be screened from public view.
Well, you can have two that are not screened.
That's
Oh,
up
Oh, an additional to the
Yes.
two?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
the two can be seen, but the additional of two
Yeah,
can be, has to be screened, okay.
yeah, that's right, because the Ikes in particular have two that are visible from the road, and they normally have 5 or 6 back behind the house that are screened.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the nature of that business. They bring the trailers on site,
Yes.
leave them there, and sell the hay out of the trailers.
You've got
and
240 bales in a trailer and.
Bring the next one and
It goes.
ship them, yeah, that's right, so. And that, two visible trailers from the street is consistent with some other provisions about commercial vehicles that's already in the code.
Restriction of employees down to 2. Handling hay sales and deliveries is going to take more than 2 individuals to operate. So, some of the businesses that have been mentioned in this conversation are more operating to supplement their own equine operations. If I had the wherewithal to do it, I would be bringing tractor trailers and hay myself instead of buying it from these individuals as well as a commercial entity. And for the most part, you're having people showing up after work to pick up a bale or 2 for their horses. If you get in any more than 500 bales or so of hay on inventory, you're going to be more of a delivery business as well as a drive-by. It'll take more than 2 employees to handle that type of business. Can we change that to 4?
I certainly don't have a problem with that. I was trying to keep the number of employees
Down.
so that it is an accessory use and it's a low-impact business in the AR zoning district.
And it's family, it's supposed to be family run.
Primarily family, yeah. No, I don't have any
So
necessarily.
you could have 6 families, but still just have 2 employees in addition to the 6 members of the family?
Right,
Okay.
right. Yeah, it's 2 non-family employees.
Signage would also apply to it as more of a family business
Right.
As an accessory use, and that's why we're on about 12 square feet of sign.
Yeah, that's right, and I really toyed with the idea of not having signage at all because it's in the AR district. But again, in talking to those that run the businesses, the primary reason for them having a sign is to let their tenants know when they're open.
Yes.
Because they don't want people coming on the property when they're at work.
One of these businesses do not operate during the day. They're
Yes.
open from 5 to 8 at night and on
That's exactly
Saturdays
right.
only.
Right.
No Sundays,
Yes.
that type of thing.
That's exactly right.
8 feet is high. I mean, it's not like you're gonna drive by, these are destination locations. So it's not like all of a sudden you'll be driving by and go, oh, wow, there's hay, let me pull in here and grab some.
No, it's just a point of geographic reference.
So,
Going down these roads, it's easier to define simply as a sign would indicate.
Yeah.
right,
Plus-
but 8 feet?
Plus the fact that some of the lots are, on the other side of the canal. And so there can be fairly considerable distance between the road and where the sign is.
I have that condition on my facility, yes.
Yeah,
And
yes.
and a lot of people drive by because of that
Yeah,
condition.
yeah.
That's why I was wanting a larger size sign. Real estate is limited to how many square feet for sale of a parcel.
I'd have to look it up, I'm not sure. But, I had 24 square feet in there to start with, and then I decided to cut that back, figuring that, it's like 6 by 4. And that's not a huge sign in itself.
I was allowed as a contractor to put up signs that were less than 32 square feet, which was basically.
How big is that?
Well, 4 by 8.
4 by 8.
4 by 8. What we had to do is cut
No,
a
I
sign.
meant, how big is
That's
this?
about 4 by 8.
Yeah, that looks like what?
A real estate sign is, in the AR is limited to 6 square feet, maximum 6 feet high.
Okay. So I'll stay with the 12.
Yeah, I mean, 6 feet, 8 feet high, I mean, personally, I don't necessarily have an argument either way on that, other than the fact that, for the property owner, where you have to, cross a canal to get to them, and the sign is back even farther.
I don't know, I figured if you go there once, you'll know where it is from now on. So,
It is primarily repeat business, I
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But the hours of operation can change,
Yeah.
I mean, especially with families.
Unless
So
you have a
what about-
changeable
what about
copy sign.
A semi truck that's got buy your hay here across the whole side of the semi.
That's signage.
I would say-
And not
I would say that's
directional.
signage, Yeah, I would say that's signage.
Are you finished with your questions, Steve?
Yes.
Dennis was hoping.
Thank you. Marge, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wondered why you're expanding beyond hay only. It seems like it's getting too broad, and it's going to allow for the possibility of violations.
I agree with Marge. I think we ought to keep it in feed. Stuff that the horse is going to eat and poop. Ron?
This is going to be an equestrian community one of these days. And you need horse bedding, you need hay, and you need feed for horses. Cows can eat just about anything, but the truth of the matter is, the equestrians are coming in, they're bringing our property values up by taking these foreclosures and turning them into equestrian centers, but horses is the priority in Loxahatchee as far as feed and stuff like that. So you gotta have hay, you gotta have feed, and you gotta have bedding, because the bedding is what they
Anything
their
else, go
stalls.
to a retail outlet.
Yeah, and it makes it just more convenient for the person. They just have to go to one location to get those items that they
Right.
need. And anything above and beyond,
And one of them had salt licks,
Mhm.
not for the horses.
Well, it's something that,
That's
that we need to really address. The largest taxpayer in our town is the Red Barn. It's, 47, 50, 60,000 a year. That runs,
When you go through 60 bales of hay in 3 weeks' time, which is basically $1,000 purchase, and you have a drought like we had this summer, the hay is already going up $5-6 a bale. You also have seasonal use, which commercial entities tend to raise the price because of the influx of out-of-towners in for the season. The local people appreciate having the option to buy at other sources. The other sources commercially are more to the center of Wellington, and their prices are on the average $7-8 per bale more than what is sold locally. So having the opportunity to go to a local family business and buy hay at a quantity at a price is survival for a lot of the.
competition is good.
I understand, all of that. But I understand, the whole idea of a level playing field. John?
One quick thing, this was a controversial issue in the past, and I may be mistaken in my recollection, but I think while Beck pays a meaningful amount of tax to the county, he doesn't pay as much tax to the town as I do, I don't believe. I think what he pays to the town is negligible. So his argument there is not for the town's benefit, but it certainly is a fact for the county's benefit.
Ron?
I think Beck's got a nice commercial business, but if you go up to Beck's and you spend a day up there, you're gonna find that most of the people that do business with Beck are from the acreage, from Wellington, from Royal Palm Beach. My concern as a council member is that we bring benefits in that cut the cost for our residents. I deal a lot with Beck, but the truth of the matter is, I'll go to Okeechobee and visit my cousin and pick up a salt block for $4.99 instead of $11.99 at Beck's. And, but he does, and he deals with all kinds of stuff, so these hay and feed businesses, they're not really hurting him
Don't say
because,
chicken feed.
but, I know, he deals with chicken feed, bird feed, hardware, you know, at one time there was a gun shop in there, so he covers himself where he makes good business being where he's at.
And I spend a lot of money there. I really do.
I still feel that if you're going to expand it that far, that, you know, if they're not going to be listed as commercial, then you're not being fair to the other commercial establishments in the town.
Point taken. Could I hear a motion on this that we're going to discuss it?
I would make, did we want to change it?
Yes, we
Yeah,
may.
we did, yeah. Keith made some changes, so you get to make the motion.
Just to the death.
I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve this initiated amendment for, as amended in tonight's meeting.
Second.
Without objection, item 6B passes unanimously. Are we done?
Yes,
Okay.
as far as I'm concerned.
Are we done yet?
Town manager, any closing comments?
No, not at this time. I think the only thing I did want to mention to the P and Z board is we do have a shade meeting scheduled for the 12th, relative to discuss our day versus the town of Waxahachie Groves. The shade meeting allows the town council and its attorneys to meet in private and to discuss its strategy and defense as it relates to the case. So, at some point, I may be able to give you a report on what's going on with that, but at this point, I'd rather, stay conservative until we can, there's something we can report, so.
Okay, so this meeting stands adjourned until December 13th. Look forward to hearing back on the Valley Crest.
Are these items going to be on the next town council meeting?
Don't know when they're going to
The two new business items, the administrative rezoning for the E property and unified land development code amendment, will be. The Valley Crest obviously not.
Jim, thank you very much for your professionalism.
And you're
Such a mess.
Well, you know, trying to pass a camel through the eye of a needle is
Yeah.
not easy.
But good try.
Thank you. I have the opportunity to help.
Oh,